Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. As their relationship continued to flourish, Cliff found himself becoming more involved in April's world. He accompanied her to support group meetings, learning more about the challenges faced. He stood by her side as she navigated the complex process of legally changing her name and gender marker. One evening, as they were preparing dinner together in Cliff's kitchen, April broached a subject they'd danced around but never directly addressed. "Cliff," she said, her voice hesitant as she chopped vegetables. "I've been thinking about taking the next step in my transition." Cliff looked up from the pasta he was stirring. "You mean..." April nodded. "Gender confirmation surgery. I've always known I wanted it, but it's such a big step. And it's expensive. I've been saving up, but..." Cliff moved to April's side, gently taking the knife from her hand and setting it down. He turned her to face him, his hands resting lightly on her hips. "April, if this is what you want, I'm behind you 100%. We'll figure out the finances together. I want you to be happy, to feel comfortable in your own skin." Tears welled up in April's eyes. "You'd do that for me? Help me save for surgery?" Cliff pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Of course I would. I love you, April. All of you. And I want to support you in every way I can." April buried her face in Cliff's chest, her body shaking with quiet sobs. Cliff held her tightly, stroking her hair and murmuring words of comfort. When April's tears subsided, she looked up at Cliff with a watery smile. "I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I'm so grateful you're in my life." Cliff wiped a stray tear from her cheek. "I'm the lucky one, April. You've opened up my world in ways I never imagined possible." They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other close, the pasta forgotten on the stove. In that moment, Cliff knew with absolute certainty that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with April. The next few months were a whirlwind of planning and preparation. Cliff and April set up a joint savings account specifically for her surgery fund. They cut back on unnecessary expenses, took on extra shifts at work, and even started a small side business selling April's graphic designs online. Throughout it all, their relationship only grew stronger. Cliff found himself falling more deeply in love with April every day. Her strength, her determination, her unwavering optimism in the face of challenges, all of it only served to reinforce his feelings for her. One crisp autumn evening, as they strolled hand in hand through their favorite park, Cliff knew the time had come. He'd been carrying the small velvet box in his pocket for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. They paused by the pond where they'd had their first real conversation all those months ago. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, reflecting off the water's surface. "April," Cliff said, his heart pounding in his chest. "There's something I want to ask you." April turned to face him, her green eyes curious. "What is it, Cliff?" Cliff took a deep breath, then slowly lowered himself to one knee. April's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. "April," Cliff began, his voice trembling slightly with emotion. "From the moment I met you, you've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. You've shown me what true love and acceptance look like. You've made me a better person, a braver person. I can't imagine my life without you in it." He pulled the small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a delicate silver ring set with a small emerald that matched April's eyes. "April, will you marry me?" Tears spilled down April's cheeks as she nodded vigorously. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, of course I'll marry you." They embraced. The world seemed to fade away around them, leaving just the two of them in their perfect moment. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless and giddy with joy, April looked down at the ring on her finger. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "But Cliff, are you sure? I mean, I'm still pre-op and..." Cliff placed a finger gently on her lips, silencing her doubts. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life, April. I love you, all of you, exactly as you are. And I'll love you through every stage of your journey, whatever that may look like." As they stood there by the pond, wrapped in each other's arms, Cliff marveled at how far they'd come. From a chance encounter in a coffee shop to this moment of commitment and love. It was better than any story he could have written. The months leading up to their wedding were a blur of activity. Between planning the ceremony, continuing to save for April's surgery, and navigating the everyday challenges of life, Cliff and April's bond only grew stronger. They decided on a small, intimate ceremony in the very park where Cliff had proposed. As the day approached, Cliff found himself growing more excited and nervous in equal measure. The night before the wedding, as they lay in bed together, April turned to Cliff with a serious expression. "Cliff," she said softly, "I want you to know something." Cliff propped himself up on one elbow, giving April his full attention. "What is it, love?" April took a deep breath. "I know we've talked about my surgery, and I still want to go through with it. But being with you, it's made me realize that I'm okay with who I am right now, too. You've helped me love myself in a way I never thought possible." Cliff felt a lump form in his throat. He reached out, caressing April's cheek gently. "April, you're perfect just as you are. I love you, surgery or no surgery. I just want you to be happy and comfortable in your own skin." April leaned into his touch, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I am happy, Cliff. Happier than I've ever been. And it's because of you." They fell asleep in each other's arms, both filled with anticipation for the day to come. The wedding day dawned bright and clear. Cliff stood under an arch of flowers in the park, his heart pounding as he waited for April to appear. When she finally came into view, walking down the makeshift aisle on the arm of her best friend, Cliff felt his breath catch in his throat. April was radiant in a flowing white dress, her auburn hair adorned with small white flowers. But it was her smile, wide and joyous, that truly took Cliff's breath away. As they exchanged vows, promising to love and support each other through all of life's challenges, Cliff felt a sense of rightness settle over him. This was where he was meant to be, with the person he was meant to be with. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant declared, and Cliff pulled April in for a kiss as their small gathering of friends and family cheered. At the reception, held in a nearby restaurant, Cliff and April shared their first dance as a married couple. As they swayed gently to the music, April leaned in close. "Thank you," she whispered in Cliff's ear. "For what?" Cliff asked, pulling back slightly to look into her eyes. April's smile was soft and full of love. "For everything. For loving me. For accepting me. For standing by me through everything. For being you." Cliff felt his heart swell with emotion. "I should be thanking you, April. You've made my life so much richer, so much more beautiful. I love you more than I ever thought possible." As they continued to dance, surrounded by the love and support of their friends and family, Cliff reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. From that first bold move in the coffee shop to this moment of commitment and love, it had been a whirlwind of discovery, growth, and deep, abiding affection. He thought about the stories he used to write, tales of transformation and self-discovery. In a way, his life with April had become the most beautiful story of all. A story of two people finding each other, accepting each other wholly and completely, and building a life together based on love, trust, and mutual understanding. As the night wore on and their guests began to depart, Cliff and April found a quiet moment alone. They stood on the restaurant's balcony looking out over the city lights. "So, Mrs. Johnson," Cliff said, wrapping his arms around April from behind. "How does it feel to be married?" April leaned back into his embrace, a contented sigh escaping her lips. "It feels perfect, Mr. Johnson. Like everything in my life has been leading up to this moment." Cliff pressed a soft kiss to her temple. "I feel the same way. You know, I used to think I was unlucky in love. All those times I ended up in the friend zone, all those missed connections. But now I'm grateful for them, because they all led me to you." April turned in his arms, facing him with a mischievous glint in her eye. Well, I'm certainly glad you decided to be bold that day in the coffee shop. Who knows where we'd be if you hadn't asked for my number? Cliff chuckled, remembering his uncharacteristic burst of courage. Probably still single and writing stories about transformation instead of living one. April's expression softened. You know, I've been thinking about those stories of yours. Oh, Cliff said, curiosity piqued. What about them? Well, April said, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. I was wondering if maybe you'd want to write our story someday. Not the fantastical elements, of course, but our real story. How we met, how we fell in love, how we've grown together. I think it could be beautiful. Cliff felt a warmth spread through his chest at the idea. I'd love that, April. Our story is better than anything I could have imagined. As the years passed, Cliff and April's love only grew stronger. They faced life's challenges together, supporting each other through thick and thin. April's gender confirmation surgery was a success, and Cliff was there every step of the way, from the nervous anticipation before the procedure to the long recovery process. Their life together was filled with laughter, love, and continuous growth. Cliff's writing career took off, with his debut novel, a story inspired by their own journey, receiving critical acclaim. April's graphic design business flourished, allowing her to quit her job at the coffee shop and pursue her passion full-time. 5 years into their marriage, they decided to start a family. After much discussion and research, they chose to adopt. The process was long and sometimes frustrating, but when they finally brought home their daughter, a beautiful 2-year-old named Emma, they knew it had all been worth it. Parenthood brought new challenges and joys to their relationship. Cliff marveled at April's natural mothering instincts, the way she seemed to know exactly what Emma needed at any given moment. April, in turn, was constantly amazed by Cliff's patience and creativity in entertaining their energetic toddler. One evening, after they had put Emma to bed, Cliff found April sitting on their balcony, gazing out at the city lights. He joined her, wrapping a warm blanket around both their shoulders. "Penny for your thoughts?" Cliff asked. April leaned into him, a contented sigh escaping her lips. "I was just thinking about how far we've come, how different my life is now compared to what I imagined it would be when I first moved to this city." Cliff nodded, understanding perfectly. "I know what you mean. If someone had told me 7 years ago that I'd be married to the most amazing woman in the world with a beautiful daughter and a successful writing career, I would have thought they were crazy." April turned to face him, her green eyes shining with love and a hint of mischief. "Most amazing woman in the world, huh? That's quite a claim, Mr. Johnson." Cliff grinned, pulling her closer. "I stand by it, Mrs. Johnson. You are without a doubt the most incredible person I've ever known." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, enjoying the cool night air and each other's company. Finally, April spoke again, her voice soft and thoughtful. "Cliff, do you ever regret anything? About us, I mean." Cliff pulled back slightly, looking into April's eyes with concern. "Regret? April, loving you is the best decision I've ever made. Why would you ask that?" April shrugged, a hint of vulnerability creeping into her expression. "I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if I've made your life more complicated than it needed to be. If being with a trans woman, dealing with all the challenges that come with that, has been too much." Cliff cupped April's face gently in his hands, his gaze intense and unwavering. "April, listen to me. You haven't complicated my life. You've enriched it beyond measure. Every challenge we've faced, every obstacle we've overcome has only made our love stronger. I wouldn't change a single thing about our journey together." Tears welled up in April's eyes as she listened to Cliff's words. "I love you so much," she whispered, leaning in to hug him softly. As they eventually made their way back inside, checking on Emma one last time before heading to bed, Cliff felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. For April, for Emma, for the life they had created together. It wasn't always easy, and it certainly wasn't conventional, but it was theirs. and he wouldn't have it any other way. In the quiet of their bedroom, as April curled up against him, already drifting off to sleep, Cliff made a silent promise to himself. He vowed to cherish every moment, every challenge, every triumph that lay ahead, to continue writing their story, not just on paper, but in the fabric of their shared life. As Cliff lay there, listening to April's steady breathing, his mind drifted to the future. Emma would be starting kindergarten soon, a milestone that filled him with equal parts excitement and trepidation. He imagined walking her to school on her first day, her little hand clasped tightly in his and April's, her backpack almost as big as she was. The thought brought a smile to his face, but it also stirred something deeper, a longing he hadn't fully acknowledged until now. Carefully, so as not to wake April, Cliff reached for his phone on the nightstand. He opened his notes app and began to type, the words flowing easily in the dim light of the screen. The little girl's eyes widened as she took in the bustling playground, a sea of unfamiliar faces and towering equipment. She clutched her father's hands tighter, uncertainty written across her features. But then she looked up, first at one dad, then the other, and saw nothing but love and encouragement in their eyes. With a deep breath, she let go and took her first step toward her new adventure. Cliff paused, rereading what he'd written. It wasn't their story exactly, but it felt right, like a natural evolution of the tales he used to pen in secret. Stories of transformation and self-discovery, yes, but also of family, of love in all its forms. He saved the note and set his phone aside, making a mental note to discuss it with April in the morning. As he drifted off to sleep, Cliff's mind was filled with possibilities. Maybe it was time to write a new kind of story, one that could help other families like theirs feel seen and understood. The next morning, Cliff woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Emma's laughter drifting in from the kitchen. He found April at the stove, flipping pancakes while their daughter sat at the table, gleefully smearing syrup on her plate. "Good morning, my loves," Cliff said, pressing a kiss to April's cheek before scooping Emma up for a hug. "Daddy!" Emma squealed, wrapping her arms around his neck. "Mommy's making pancakes shaped like stars." Cliff grinned, setting Emma back in her chair. "Is that so? Well, that sounds absolutely stellar." April groaned good-naturedly at the pun, but her eyes were bright with amusement. "I was wondering when you'd grace us with your presence, sleepyhead. Coffee's ready if you need it." As they settled into their breakfast routine, Cliff found himself watching April and Emma, his heart swelling with love. April caught his eye, raising an eyebrow in silent question. "I had an idea last night," Cliff said, reaching for his coffee mug, "about a new writing project." April's interest was immediately piqued. She knew how much Cliff's writing meant to him, how it had been both a personal outlet and a successful career. "Oh, what kind of project?" Cliff took a sip of coffee, gathering his thoughts. "Well, I was thinking about Emma starting school soon and about our family. And I thought, maybe it's time to write stories for kids like ours. Stories about different kinds of families, about acceptance and love." April's eyes lit up, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Cliff, that's a wonderful idea. There's such a need for books like that." Encouraged by her enthusiasm, Cliff continued, "I started writing a little bit last night. Just a scene about a little girl with 2 dads starting school. But I was thinking we could collaborate on it. Your illustrations, my words. What do you think?" April reached across the table, squeezing Cliff's hand. "I think it's perfect. It's like the next chapter of our story, isn't it? Using our experiences to help other families feel represented." Emma, who had been listening with the half attention of a child more interested in her pancakes, perked up at this. "Are you gonna write a story about me, Daddy?" Cliff chuckled, reaching out to ruffle her hair. "Not exactly, sweetheart. But maybe we could write a story about a little girl a lot like you. Would you like that?" Emma nodded enthusiastically, syrup dripping from her chin. "Can she have a pet dragon?" April laughed, reaching for a napkin to clean Emma's face. "I think we can work a dragon in somewhere, don't you, Cliff?" As they continued their breakfast, the conversation flowing easily between book ideas and Emma's increasingly fantastical plot suggestions, Cliff felt a sense of excitement building within him. This new project felt right, like a natural progression of everything he and April had been through together. Later that day, after Emma had been put down for her nap, Cliff and April sat at their shared desk, brainstorming ideas for their book. April sketched rough character designs, while Cliff jotted down plot points and themes they wanted to explore. "You know," April said, looking up from her sketch pad, "when I first realized I was trans, I never imagined I'd have this. A loving husband, a beautiful daughter, a chance to make a difference for families like ours. It still feels surreal sometimes." Cliff set down his pen, turning to face April fully. "I know what you mean. I never thought I'd find someone who understood me so completely, who'd inspire me to be the best version of myself. You and Emma. You're my whole world." Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.